Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. And today we're continuing on our series talking about the original Lord of the Rings films from Peter Jackson. We are talking about Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers today. It's going to be super fun to talk about this epic film. I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and Oscar is here.
Hello.
And Jen is here.
Hello.
How are you both doing?
Yeah, doing all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to be out of the more intense heat of a few weeks ago, and looking forward to diving into this awesome film with you guys.
Yeah. And Jen, just we should remind everybody that this was your first time ever watching this film, correct?
Yes, it is my first time.
Yes.
My first and second time, because I watched the theatrical release and then I had questions, so then I on the same day turned around and watched the extended
Oh
release.
my gosh.
A whole Two Towers day.
Wow.
Nice.
Very good. I did end up watching the extended edition this time. I wasn't going to, but I was just like, oh, might as well, watch the most, I guess, the most accurate version. Might as well watch it. So I did. And it's interesting. I was asking my friends on Twitter, and a ton of them said that this is their favorite of the three. And you wouldn't know, Jen, because you haven't watched the third one yet. But Oscar, does that surprise you that people said that so much?
I think there are good reasons why it might be their favorites, but it's not my personal favorites.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting watching it again, because it had been probably since 2015, I think, is when I did I reviewed them for the channel for Family Movie Night, so it'd been a while since I'd watched them, and I liked this better than I remembered. I mean, I remember I liked it, but I don't know. I felt like the pacing wasn't as difficult as I remembered. I still think there are a few parts where it could be tightened a little bit, especially, watching the extended edition, you're going to get that. But I don't know. I enjoyed it more. I had more fun with it than I remembered. So
I was curious because every person I talked to either said the first or the last one were their favorites. But my sister said that her singular favorite scene in all three was in Two Towers. So I was eager to call her after I'd watched them. She wouldn't tell me what it was. So I was eager to call her and find out what that was.
As we go for the film, I'd be really curious to know what that scene is.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah.
She said she'd watched it over 100 times, and I was watching for what it could be, and I had some guesses when I called her. But anyway.
Yeah, it is true that people that love these movies watch them on repeat. I know so many people that this is kind of their, in a way, a comfort watch, which is interesting.
Yeah. I tend to think of them as an annual experience, usually around December.
Oh, okay.
Because I like to keep them special.
Didn't they come out in did they come out? Maybe just Return of the King came out in December?
All six of the Middle-earth films have been released in December.
Oh, see, that's why.
Yeah. We just had just a ton of people saying that. I'm trying to see some of the reasons that people said. My friend Josh, he said, I think it has more complete contained narrative. All of the separate stories have their own beginning, middle, and end. They all tie together well and are all satisfying on their own. And I think that sometimes it's easiest to make the middle movie of a trilogy the best, because you don't have to worry about setup and you don't have to worry about finish. It's kind of all cream filling.
Do you think it's drawing comparisons to The Empire Strikes Back, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of them where that middle movie gets it the most right.
Well, and after saying on the Fellowship conversation that I saw some Harry Potter in this, I got a lot of feedback about that.
Oh, you did?
And a lot of people saying it's more like Star Wars, and I'm talking so much about it. But I did not have that occur to me at all in this one, except when Gollum would do a Smeagol voice because it sounds exactly like Dobby.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, we always have to remember that Star Wars is like Lord of the Rings. I mean, Lord of the Rings came first.
Right. And I kept saying, and that was a feedback I also got too, that the source material for both of those extended stories is this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also of note, 2002 was the year where we were both introduced to Dobby and Gollum, and Jar Jar Binks also returned for a bit.
Yeah.
And they all kind of have similar sounds.
I don't think Jar Jar sounds like either Dobby or Gollum, but that's me.
Not that close. But Dobby sounds exactly like the Smeagol voice when Gollum does it. I don't know if did Andy Serkis do both? I don't know.
No, he didn't do Dobby, but yeah, I mean Andy Serkis, we'll talk about him more, but I mean, if you think about what else was happening in the world of CGI in 2002, I mean, it is very impressive. The special effects in this movie are outstanding. They still look, I think, great, even now.
They were also leaning more on models and other such practical effects more than Attack of the Clones was at the time. So that's part of why it stands up so beautifully.
Mm-hmm. There were 2 fighting scenes that I literally said out loud, how did they do that? Mm-hmm. In this one, it was amazing.
Yeah, especially in 2002. I mean, it's very impressive. I mean, that was when they were, I mean, I think that Shrek came out in either 2001 or 2002.
2001.
2001. Okay. Yeah. So it was right around then. I mean, you just think of the way that the computer animation was in that era. I mean, I don't know. It's very impressive. What they did with Andy Serkis and Gollum in particular. It looks so good.
Indeed.
Yeah, totally. It looks like it, and because they shot on film, he looks like he blends into the background so beautifully, kind of like the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. We get a little bit of a back story, a little bit of kind of what happened, flashback. We get the "you shall not pass," and then we see Gandalf fighting the Balrog, and we also get this really cute scene with Sam. He's got the salt from the Shire, and they're like, so roast cute chicken.
And the magic of elvish rope.
Yes, yeah, and that the rope scene is extended, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and the salt as well.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very sweet scene.
I'll say this. Gandalf going down with the Balrog, fighting to the bitter end with that incredible music and that incredible shot of them descending into the lake. It's like a Raphael painting brought to life, like an angel battling a demon.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's true.
It looks amazing. It's otherworldly for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you
see, wish they looked as this good.
Yeah, and you see that the ring is getting heavier. It's more of a burden, and it's starting to change Frodo. And I think that that's what makes this story, one of the things that make the story work so well, is that it really goes from being Frodo's story to being Sam's story by the end. I mean, he really does save the day and keep Frodo going, and he's just such a wonderful, loyal friend. And I think that's what I just think we're attracted to stories of our friendship. I think that's what we we hope for, we want in our lives. And because, yeah, I mean, family is important, but friendship, you actually have to work at, you have to choose. It's not a requirement. And so I think stories about friendship are just very appealing. And Sam and his character and Sean Astin's performance it really becomes the main hero of the story.
By the end, I just kept saying Sean Astin was so good in this.
Yeah.
Sean, I agree. Sean Astin he really is in many ways is the heart of the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of ways, Elijah Wood really did capture Frodo's slow, decaying spirit and decaying body,
mm-hmm.
losing himself to the ring. The two of them just I can't imagine anyone else hitting those exact same emotional beats as well.
Yeah, you really need both in order for it to work. But I do think that Sam becomes the emotional sort of thrust of the story. Kind of the hero. He just won't give up, and it just is very endearing.
Well, it was interesting to me because I was so glad that in Fellowship it was so clearly established for me that the ring could not penetrate Sam.
Mm-hmm.
It made the focus more on his loyalty to Frodo instead of any worry there.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
So many times throughout the second one, what an amazing creature, thing, person, friend he is, that he not only could be affected by the ring, but he was I love how he calls him Mr. Frodo. I love just how much he's in it till the end with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what do you think, Oscar, of this dynamic between Frodo and Gollum in this movie, and then the animosity that Sam has towards Gollum? What do you think about that?
The moment Gollum ingratiates himself to Sam and Frodo, it increases the tension tremendously, because on the one hand, they need a guide to get into Mordor, but on the other hand, you can see how Gollum very carefully makes himself seem appealing to Frodo. Frodo starts to see his own frailties in Gollum's as well, but Sam is just not having any of Gollum's nonsense, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really quite upsetting to see that friendship start to be frayed in small scenes, but it's also reassuring when it comes back around at the end of this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think of that aspect, Jen?
Well, I didn't know a lot about Gollum going into this movie. I didn't know the stuff about him being a hobbit before, and having Frodo identify that. And I was so curious to watch Frodo begin to defend him to Sam, and to like get after Sam a little bit for being so hard on him. And Sam is just so plain about it. He's like, he can think of nothing else but the ring. Like, he's singular in his selfishness. And because Sam is just so plain about what's good and what's right and what's wrong. And Frodo is walking this interesting line of understanding because of his relationship with the ring. So the whole, like, the three of them together, it makes her for such an interesting dynamic. Because Sam is just like, Gollum is bad, and just gives him crap so much. And I mean, everyone's just beating up on Gollum. But Sam is like, it's because that's who he is.
Well, and then Gollum basically bites Sam. So that one,
right.
Making not like, I mean, and yeah, I think that Frodo, is Gollum a hobbit or is he a man?
Gollum is basically a hobbit, or to be more precise, he's a Stor, which is a relative of the hobbits.
Oh, okay.
Smeagol. His name was Smeagol.
Smeagol. Yeah. I for some reason I thought he was human, but yeah, he's they're definitely something that Frodo has to keep hope up for Gollum, because he sees himself, he feels himself becoming Gollum, and that he knows that the ring is going to take him. So he has to have hope for Gollum if he has any hope for himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also think it helps that in Andy Serkis's performance, there is something that is pitiable about Smeagol, in the fact that he is essentially in an abusive relationship with his alter ego, with Gollum.
Yeah, that's true. And then we have Merry and Pippin are with the Urkai.
Yes.
Urkai. And they're basically being kind of tortured, and they think that they have the ring and they don't. And then you have Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli trying to set them free, trying to find them, Merry and Pippin. And a lot of people I've heard say that they think sort of the Merry and Pippin plot is the weaker part of the movie, but with the Ents and everything coming up. But I like it. I think that you need kind of a break from especially from the battle scenes once they start. So I like it, and especially I think it's Merry. Well, I forget which one of them is the one that has the main argument with Treebird.
It is Merry. Yes,
it's Merry. Yeah, so I was thinking.
He grows up most in this film, and Pippin grows up more in the next film.
Mm-hmm. Jen, what do you think of that, of their plot with the Ents?
Well, I thought it was clearly the comic relief, because I laughed so much at so much of the stuff Treebird said. I really thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I also didn't fully understand why. I mean, was he just their ride? Because by the end, when they had decided that they aren't gonna fight, like he's just taking them wherever he wants to go, I guess, because they've become friends. I didn't fully understand why they were just riding
yeah
along.
Well, I mean, he tries to convince them to go into battle, and they have their whole council and everything, and they say no, and that's when he's like, how can you stand by and just watch this happen? And then finally, when we're jumping ahead, but when they see the deforestation, that finally convinces them to get involved. But yeah, they are definitely very reticent. I mean, if you think of, they were probably the US in World War II of the story, waiting to get involved.
Yes, they did take a while, but I did think so much of it was funny. I mean, they just have lost their women. They don't know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I never took that as funny. I always took that as bittersweet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess so, but I don't know. It was just how he said everything, and the fact that he talks slow and only says things that are worth talking that slowly about.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, what do you think of the casting of John Rhys Davies, aka Gimli, as Treebeard?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, he's Treebird?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that either.
That is interesting, and it makes sense.
But you did a good job.
Not the casting, but now that I'm hearing its voice in my head, I'm like, oh yeah. Well, that is interesting.
I do think that this probably has the best of the Howard Shore scores. I think the orchestration is really strong here.
We didn't talk about Howard Shore's music in the last film, but here he carries through the excellent themes introduced in that film, like the Fellowship theme, and introduces fantastic new cues, like the theme for Rohan, for example.
Yeah, I think it was really good.
He really gives so much of a sense of character, and so much of a sense of culture and thematic resonance with each piece of music.
I was just looking to see, it wasn't even nominated for best score. How is it not nominated? That's crazy.
I have no idea. I have no idea how Enya lost the Oscar in the last movie.
Yeah, it's they had that year. They had Frida was the winner. The score for Frida by Elliot Goldenthal. I'm sure it's good, but really, and then there was actually some big heavy hitters that year. They had John Williams for Catch Me If You Can, Elmer Bernstein for Far From Heaven, the Philip Glass for The Hours, and Thomas Newman for Road to Perdition. But none of those, I don't think, stand out the way that, I don't know, this does. I feel like it should have gotten nominated, but those are some heavy hitter composers, so I'll forgive them.
I think the score, I mean, just plays such a role in the storytelling, because it does all those new things that were introduced in reticent of where you are, what's happening. It really very, very, it's a order for a score, these movies, and it does well.
Yeah. And one minor thing that I think can be a little confusing is I think that Sauron and Saruman are too close. I get it confused. The names are too similar. I was like, who are they talking about? Then them both be bad guys. I don't know.
I think they are too similar, but I only get them confused when I'm trying to talk about them.
Yes.
Watching it and experiencing it, I don't feel confused when they're talking about who's who. But when I try to talk about it, that's when I get confused.
Yeah, that's fair. That's true. But
I'm not going to agree, but also I will say that the film does try to distinguish them somewhat by setting up the evil alliance of the two towers, Saruman in Orthanc, as played by Christopher Lee, and Sauron in Barad-dûr as the flaming red eye.
Yeah, I don't know. I just get a little. I sometimes would get a little confused when I was taking my notes. That's all. But Christopher Lee is so good. We talked about it last time, but he's great. He was
one of my friends told me in the book that the movie kind of changes the relationship between those two. That the book has them as more competitive beings instead of one kind of
for Sauron and Saruman.
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. In the book,
I was like, I only know it this way.
Yeah,
in the book, Saruman is basically out for himself and plans to go up against Sauron eventually. He's a bit in over his head.
And in this movie, he declares himself the
ally of Sauron.
Yeah,
basically.
the ally. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have two groups of humans in this story, right? We have the Rohan, and then we have the what's it called? The
Gondorians.
Yeah. What we meet are the Rohan. The Theoden child, his nephew, and he's under the control of this guy Grima. And I think this Grima guy is is a little over the top. He's such a sniveling. I mean, who would not think this guy is a villain?
People were saying that as far back as 2002. Even Carl Urban made a joke about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a little too obvious. It worked for me as a 10-year-old because there were a lot of new characters to be introduced to. But it doesn't really. I don't think it works that well. He's performed well by Brad Dourif, though.
Yeah, I mean that's true because you do sometimes want just archetypes that immediately okay, this is so you don't have to work so hard for everything. I kind of understand that, but it is a little over the top.
Yeah, I've seen artistic renditions of him where he just looks more like a normal but slightly deformed man, but not like a Nosferatu.
Yeah, Grima Worm Tongue.
He's called that in the book, so sometimes.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot, but nice conversation between Merry and Pippin where he says, I think we might have made a mistake leaving the Shire, Pippin. I thought that was a nice moment between them.
It's a good way to subtly introduce the Ents by having them being mentioned as folktales to the hobbits.
Yeah. And then we have the Riders of Rohan, and we get them. They've been banished, and they meet up with. I called them AGL in my notes: Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas.
The three musketeers, the three hunters.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah. What do you think about that? That they kind of made them this trio. Yeah. What do you think of them, Jen?
I thought that was just going to carry over from the Fellowship, that they were kind of united together in their purpose. And so, and that they were initially trying to find Pippin and Merryweather. Mm-hmm. They were still united in purpose. So
what do you think of the banter between them, though? Like their sort of buddy chemistry between the three of them?
Oh, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I pretty much loved there are two different conversations that I loved between Gimli and Legolas that just made me laugh out loud. One at the very end, which I'm sure you know about it, one in the middle. And I just thought it was funny. Like, I just think they are comrades in the best ways and also very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially towards the end when Gimli gets Aragorn to throw him. Toss me. Like, that's a good one.
I love when Gimli puts the armor piece on and was like, I was gonna get it altered because it's super long. He's like, it's kind of adjust. I laughed so hard.
Yeah.
I will say, Gimli's actually more of a serious character in the book, but the inclusion of this more humorous personality was done with the suggestion of John Rhys Davies, and it works in the film, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of Karl Urban as Eomer? His role in the story?
I think he's underused, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought, because I really liked him.
So he says that...
He actually appears in the Battle of Helm's Deep alongside Aragorn. How amazing would that have been?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he's the nephew of Theoden, and like I said, Theoden is under the control of this Grima guy, and he's kind of been sort of hypnotized by him, and so he also tells them about that the White Wizard is cunning, and they talk about the White Wizard. And so then we later on we meet Gandalf the White, and that's exciting because obviously he had died in the previous one, so I guess he gets to come back to life. So that's fun.
What did you think of that whole sequence of Gandalf's return, Jen?
I actually was fascinated by it because I enjoyed. Maybe one of my favorite fight scenes is just a little bit right before that shows him finishing his battle with that thing in Fellowship. And
the Balrog
showing up. And when I was talking to my sister, tell me if this is wrong, she said that the White Wizards were generally good. Were generally good, and that white was something to attain. So it's significant that Saruman is a White Wizard and is bad.
Yes, it essentially means Gandalf has been promoted to the head of his order and supersedes Saruman.
Right. But I loved all of it. But I was interested and curious about how he kind of had to be reminded who he was, and what his name was. And I was like, why is that? And there's obviously something happens in the transition to come back that he kind of forgets himself.
Yes, it's a little bit like when the Doctor regenerates, he assumes a bit of a new persona, but retains his old memories.
And they have to come back. I just really liked seeing him remember.
Yes.
A little bit.
He is essentially a divine spirit, remembering what it means to be human again.
Oh, see, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I cheered on my couch.
Yeah, it's an exciting moment.
I wondered if that was my sister's moment. She said no.
And it's a very different performance from, say, Ian McKellen. Gandalf the Grey is quite a down-to-earth, quite an approachable, earthy sort of chap, whereas Gandalf the White really does feel more like a man on a mission, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he becomes cryptic a little bit in his communication, and almost like he's foretelling things as he's talking in a different kind of way.
Yes.
So Gandalf takes the bad spirit out of Theoden, and he becomes normal looking. I didn't know how to say it.
It's a stunning effect, isn't it? When
Yeah.
he goes from decrepit and wizened to more, still quite senior, but more vigorous.
Yeah, and I really like the conversation between Gandalf and Aragorn when Gandalf says, "Do not regret your decision to leave him because he must finish this task alone." And then Aragorn says, "He is not alone. Sam went with him." And you see this look on Gandalf's face, like, "Oh, good." That's a nice one too. Mm-hmm.
That amazing sort of rush of reassurance that maybe Frodo has a chance after all.
Yeah. We also see the orc army getting built in Mordor. And what do you think was the appeal of the of following the dark side for Saruman? And what do you think was the final temptation to make him go that way?
It's a combination, I think, of cynicism on his part and a level of disdain towards the Free Peoples. And when he finally attains that power, it just allows all of his more negative impulses to take hold, building machines, breeding monsters, and exerting himself as a lord over Rohan. This descent into power brings out the worst in him, basically.
What do you think, Jen?
I mean, I was just going to say power, just the general want for power, but I think that Oscar is exactly hit it, that the cynicism, I think he just was fed up with people and ideals, and this was far more appealing to and a faster way to power.
Because it is always funny in these stories when you're, especially in Star Wars, when it's like, it's literally called the dark side. Why are you going over there? It's not going to end well for you. It's literally called the dark side.
And it's fascinating because the dark side is basically a shortcut, and it's not, and it isn't really it's not really the slower, more methodical way.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very well done here when they're making the orc army. That all looks very effective and slimy and gross.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how crazy it must have looked on the set over in New Zealand. All these creatures and caverns and all these orcs walking around. That must have been a real fever dream.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how they did some of this. I can't imagine their volume of things. Like, I can't. Yeah.
So this Grima guy is super creepy to Eowyn, who is the niece of Theoden. And what do you think of Eowyn as a character, Oscar? What do you think of her?
I think she might be one of my favorite characters in this film and the next film. There's such a strength and inner resilience to Eowyn, and also you get the sense that she is battling her own sense of, basically her own sense of despair at the future of her people and her kingdom. And at the first instance where there does appear to be a glimmer of hope on the horizon, she really latches onto it, and it really spurs her on and to eventually do great deeds, as we see in the next film.
Yeah. I mean, she can be a little one note, I think, sometimes. And when we see, I don't mind in the next movie her moment, but I think that it's hard when we've already become attached to Arwen with Aragorn. It's kind of hard to have this other female character for him.
Do you not really like her one-sided crush towards Aragorn?
Well, it just is hard because, again, we've already become invested in him with another woman. So then there's this other person coming in. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that, Jen?
Well, Rachel, your rom-com mentality is showing because you want to root for a couple. And so when she has a crush, you want to be able to root for her, but you can't.
Yes.
Initially, it's so curious to me that Oscar is saying she's one of his favorites, because initially I thought, why is she here? And she did seem a little one note to me. And I thought maybe she was just a foil character to pull information out and represent things. But then by the end, I ended up really liking her. I love the moment at the end where she runs to Aragorn and says, they're making me go in the caves with the women. And she fights. And I was like, I love how she wants to represent and find hope with her people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we get to see
that. And then you can't root for her crush because you're like, Aragorn is taken.
Is she in the book? Is she in the book, Oscar?
Yes, she is.
Okay. So then we have the Rohan, the people of Rohan getting evacuated to Helm's Deep. And
first, sorry,
go ahead.
This is a key scene, which is the funeral of the king's son and the king grieving at his son's grave. And you have this really heartbreaking conversation between Theoden and Gandalf, which leads to Theoden saying, no parent should have to bury their child.
Yeah.
That was a standout like scene to me as well, especially when he says that, because you're just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, and both of the kings end up having to bury their sons within this story, because you have Boromir as well. It passed away.
I was happy to see Sean Bean made it in this one.
Yeah, flashback.
Yeah.
So then Gandalf departs to find Eomer, who had left, who had been exiled, and the followers there. And this is when you get the scene with Saruman saying, "The world of men will fall." It's very.
And the reveal of the 10,000 Uruk-hai.
Yeah, that army. Yeah. Holy cow.
It's very Leni Riefenstahl in its presentation, like this Third Reich rally of soldiers.
Mm-hmm. And they call them Oliphants, which are like these kind of giant elephants kind of creatures.
Yes, we return to Frodo and Sam watching these convoys of evil men coming into Mordor, the Easterlings and the Haradrim. Mm-hmm. And the Haradrim ride atop these huge elephant creatures, which are pretty intimidating, I must say.
Yeah. So then Faramir and the soldiers attack Frodo and Sam. And this is, I know people that are big fans of the book really don't like how they portray Faramir in the movie. It's very different than the book, correct?
Well, when you compare it is very different, but when you compare his portrayal in the theatrical cut versus extended edition, he's a much better character in the extended cut.
Mm-hmm.
I did like him more.
Yeah.
In the extended one.
Because he has a scene where he turns over a dead Haradrim soldier. He ponders on what his name was, where he came from, whether he was really evil at heart, what lies or threats led him on this long march from home, and would he not rather have stayed there? It is such a humanizing speech and makes you realize that Faramir is actually much more of an introverted, maybe even more of an intellectual man than Boromir was.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not motivated by greed or selfishness.
And it was more than just his like desire to win over his father's favor. He was like a good person at a good, yeah.
And he says, I think it's him who says it, that war will make corpses of us all.
That's him, yes.
Yeah. And we also get a scene where Eowyn is cooking for Aragorn. He makes the stew. I kind of like that little moment. It's like, it's good.
It is a made-up scene, but it is a nice window into both of their characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We get a scene
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
Go ahead.
And I must say, Aragorn looks pretty good for 87 years old.
Right. Yes. I thought the same.
He's a more long-lived human, granted, but I like those little snippets where we learn that there is more to Aragorn and his people than simply being just like the men of Rohan or the men of Gondor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get a scene where they think that Aragorn has been killed, fallen off a cliff. But you can't get rid of Aragorn that easy, right?
Nope.
They should have known. And
But that
Arwen.
scene, oh yes,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, that leads into the Arwen scene. You go.
Yes, so Arwen is told by her father that Aragorn will not return, and he reminds her that if she remains in Middle Earth, she will outlive Aragorn by thousands of years, and so she decides to leave. So that's an emotional scene.
And it follows with 2 more scenes of her and Aragorn's love, basically, back in Rivendell. Mm-hmm. And it's a tricky thing to maintain investment in a romance that wasn't really picked up until halfway through the first film, but they managed to do it really effectively.
Now, Arwen isn't in the book very much, right?
That's right. She's not even in the 2 towers, strictly speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that they added some female characters. I think they could have even added more. And I mean, I guess that's what they're kind of doing in this new series, is they're boosting up. And you have whiny, annoying people online complaining about it. But I mean, I don't know. You want to be able to watch these movies and everybody be able to connect with it a little bit. It's a fantastical world, so they can make it however they want.
But there are also rules when it comes to Tolkien, and you can bend them, as these films have done, and you can do that effectively. But it all depends on how much you want to bend them versus doing something that just makes no sense at all, not just from a world standpoint, but from a storytelling standpoint.
I'm just saying that it's not like a true event, so it's not like you have to have the characters be necessarily male, female, of a particular race, kind of thing. Like, there should be, in a fantastical world and world building, there should be room for casting interpretations, I feel like, and adding characters. I don't know. I just think the internet's insane sometimes.
But back to the film.
Yes.
I was interested in the scene again, because I don't know how it all fleshes out, that her dad, that's her dad, right, was so insistent that she had to leave. And I mean, that's out of like really concern that she needs to stay with her people. But the rom-com in me was like, well, why? He's not dead. I didn't understand where they were going.
Because I think she's giving up. She will live a long time, and she'll outlive Aragorn, but she'll also be giving up her immortality if she's not with the elves.
Oh, does she give it up if doesn't stay with her people?
She gives it up if she stays with Aragorn and is wedded to him.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So that is pretty significant.
So they arrive at Helm's Deep, and they see Saruman's army is massive. They are marching to Helm's Deep. They say there will be no dawn for men, and this is when we have Merry and Pippin trying to convince the Ent Council to go against Isengard, go towards Isengard, and we see Treebeard, and Merry says, how can you stand by? So that's a good scene. And we also get the scene with Brago the horse saving Aragorn, which is very good.
And it's also a nice instance where a previous scene in the extended cut shows who the horse is and why he came to Aragorn's rescue, because Aragorn calmed him and set him free.
Yes, and also Elrond, Arwen's father, is contacted by Galadriel, who they basically convince the other elves to align with the men and go to Helm's Deep. So that's kind of our one Galadriel scene in the movie. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
We have, we do find out the strength of the ring bearer is failing. The quest will claim his life. And that men are easily seduced by power. It's a
powerful tone setter, that conversation between Elrond and Galadriel, as it shows all the pieces on the board lining up for their next moves. Saruman attack on Isengard, and Faramir's choice regarding the One Ring.
Yeah, and you get a real sense of stakes of what is up here for their entire world could be at stake here. I mean, it's as big a stakes as you could get. And then we have Faramir, we'll get more of his backstory with Frodo. With Boromir. And his the
steward of Gondor. I'm sorry.
Yes, and their animosity and rivalry. That's the word I'm looking for. Rivalry with each other, and that Boromir was sent to be in the Fellowship. Faramir wanted to go instead. And
slight disagreement, because the brothers actually loved each other quite a lot, but their father Denethor always put Faramir down, while also propping Boromir up to an uncomfortable extent. So that was where, and he was the one responsible for sending Boromir north to Rivendell.
Yeah, I mean, I would still say they definitely had a rivalry, even if they loved each other. I think there was rivalry between
in their father's eyes, maybe, but I didn't think they did between each other.
Yeah.
That was definitely my take, is that they had a rivalry between the two of them, but they still loved each other. But
I just felt like Boromir really understood the plight of Faramir with their father, because he even stands up for him a little bit and is like, he loves you and he wants, and he's in it. But the dad will have nothing of it.
Exactly.
Well, Faramir takes Frodo to the Forbidden Pool, and Gollum is there, and he says, "Should I shoot?" And then he says, "This creature is bound to me, and I to him." So,
it really shows how much Frodo feels that his fate has now become tied up with Gollum's, and not only as a guide, but symbolically as well. That's why he's always trying to gently coax the Smeagol side of Gollum out, which unfortunately gets horrifically scuppered when Faramir and the Rangers accost Gollum and rather harshly interrogate him, and that brings Gollum back out again.
Yeah, and then we also get Faramir with he puts his knife up to his sword up to the ring, and he says, "It's within my grasp, the ring of power." So
this was the huge point of contention for book fans, because Faramir was the one human character who could not be tempted by the ring at all. So to see him succumb to temptation as many of the other human characters had done before him, well, the reason the writers made that choice was because they felt the ring still needed to present a corrupting threat to everyone around Frodo and Sam. So that was why they made that choice. so I understand. But it is but it is still quite a contrast to Faramir in the book versus Faramir in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get a great entrance of Aragorn because they think he's dead, and he kind of storms through the big doors to the castle, and I don't know, it's a good entrance, I thought.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, everyone's excited because he's alive.
Yes.
But also the way he dramatically opens the door to the king's throne room.
Yes.
So the Ents agree to take Merry and Pippin to Isengard, and then Eowyn says that she wants to stand by Aragorn's side, and the people want to stand by his side because they love you. And you see the men saying goodbye to the women and children are in the Helm's Deep, and so they say goodbye. Your men will follow you to the end. And then Theoden suits up as the king to lead his people.
And that's another poetically beautiful, but also incredibly stark scene. Theoden reciting this poem while they're here and prepare for battle. Some of them, boys and old men, while this great host of armored Uruk-hai marches ever closer to Helm's Deep. It's such a stark, almost despairing tone, and it makes
it felt hopeless.
It's one of those scenes where you think it makes you, it almost reminds you of how this great strife of humanity has been going on for thousands of years, and the books and the film captured that almost eternal conflicts. Really well.
True. It almost has a bit of a biblical feel when the story in the kind of remind me of the story in the Bible. I think it's Elijah, or I forget, but when he says he says they that be with us are more than they that be with them, and that there's this, because he looks over and he sees all of these soldiers, and they think, how could we possibly compete with just a never-ending supply of soldiers? But they're basically like clones. They don't have the heart that all of that these fighters have, or the skill.
Well, that's the thing. It's free people, of both old and young, against an army of mindless automatons bred to kill.
And the elves come to fight for men. And you do get a great little funny scene between Legolas and Gimli. Shall I describe it to you, or should I find you a box?
Oh, shall I find you a box? I love that.
That's good. And
I love their friendship in this film.
Yeah, it's fun. And so then we get to the battles. I do think that some of the battling goes on a little long for me. I get a little, it's a little self-indulgent sometimes. I'm just like, let's move it along. But it wasn't as bad for me this time as I remembered it being. So I don't know if that makes any sense. But maybe
because the character scenes really drew you in this time.
Maybe. And
I was ready for there to be too much fighting, and I did not way, because I really was engaged with the characters and what was happening. Although for some reason, where did they get ladders? That's all I want to know.
Well, they must have just had them in Helm's Deep, I guess. But
I rewound it and I was like, wait a minute, what?
The Uruk-hai brought up the ladders with them, along with their ballista, the battering rams, and the gunpowder explosives.
Oh.
And
I'm like, they have ladders?
Yeah. And the Ents say, this is not our war. And Merry says, you are part of this world. You must help. So that's a good moment. And you also have Legolas basically like sliding down the staircase on it's like a snowboard kind of looking thing. That was kind of fun.
So, some people really, really dislike the extreme Legolas stunts, but for me, I'm quite partial to the shield surfing bit. I like it.
Why was he not Is that not like him? Why did they not like his stunt?
Well, because they're kind of almost over the top for their own sake.
Yeah.
I think they're fun, but I do think that, I mean, I think in general, the battles look amazing, especially for 2002, but there are times when it feels a little blue on blue to me. And it's a little hard to kind of, on my not giant screen, to sort of figure out exactly what's going on as far as the battles. But you need those kind of moments.
That way. I never thought that at all. And it was so amazing. And I just watched my little iPad.
Oh, yeah, I that's how I felt. Sometimes it's a little blue on blue. I appreciated having the moments of individual fighting where I could get more involved as opposed to sort of the bigger scenes. You get the Gimli wanting Aragorn to toss him. That's a great moment. Very funny. And
it's very
yeah, Gimli is just the best, even in battle.
I will also say that even though the elves don't appear at Helm's Deep in the book, it's probably one of the more popular changes from the source material, because it shows that the elves are still participating in the War of the Ring and doing their bits to protect Middle Earth.
Yeah.
I did not know that they don't come in the book, but so many of them die. And I was for a second, I guess they can die.
Well, yeah, that's it. The elves are long-lived, but they can be slain in battle, or they can die of a broken heart.
Mm-hmm. And so then we have the Ents trap Saruman in his tower because they get upset about the deforestation. And
that's understandable.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically a genocide from their perspective.
Yeah.
And Faramir, Frodo tells Faramir, "You must let me go," and that's when
they go to Osgiliath, this ruined city on the borders of Gondor, which is also a made-up scenario, but it serves as the sort of the action climax of Frodo and Sam's story when a Nazgul comes close to claiming the ring.
Yeah, it goes out there. And look.
He says that it's calling to me, and then that's when Sam says, "Hold on, Mr. Frodo."
Yep, and he runs.
And Sam finally talks some sense into Faramir.
Yes, and then Frodo confronts the Nazgul, and
but it almost looks like Frodo's about to give up the ring and give up the quest.
Yeah, it does look like that.
And then he almost stabs Sam.
After Sam saves him.
Yeah.
And he says, "It's yours, Sam." And that's when we get probably, this is the pillow moment that we talked about last time, the speech. The pillow moment of this movie is when Sam says, "It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could then be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass, a new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now, folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something, that there's some good in this world, Frodo, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for."
Fantastic speech.
Yeah. It's a good moment.
And I think for the audience, those who are initiated with the books and those who weren't, it was a great way to keep tithing them on, even though we've been subjected to all this carnage and destruction. That there is something worth fighting for, even if it looks hopeless.
Well, and that's what I think makes the story work so well, is that there are like clear stakes there's evil and good, and this is what we're fighting for, as opposed to a lot of other fantasies where things get a lot more muddled and they start to lose me. There is a clear thing, a clear goal, a clear journey that they're on. And I just think that gives sort of weight and stakes and makes it easy to be invested in the story that sometimes you don't have in these fantasy stories, for me personally. So I think it's what makes this whole thing work so well. We also get they're losing, and then Gandalf and Eomer arrive with the Rohirrim, and that sort of turns the tide of the battle, and we get the Ents breaking the dam and flooding everything too.
So that was my sister's favorite in all of the trilogy, is when Gandalf shows up on the white horse.
Yeah, that's a good moment.
Because you forget that he's coming. Like, you're involved in all this battle, and so did they. They forgot that he was coming, even though they told him that he told them when he was going to come. And then there he is, and they come and completely, turn the tides of a losing battle. And that, coupled with them breaking the dam and the water, looks so cool.
Yeah, it's a good moment.
It was really satisfying to see the Ents tear their way through Isengard, smashing all those orcs and such.
Yes,
yeah,
place them all into that forest of trees. They just watch and wait until they're all in there, and then all the trees start moving.
It's very, very much a Birnam Wood come to Dunsinane movement, only made quite literal.
Mm-hmm. And the people leave, the women and children leave, and they flee, and then also Faramir lets Frodo and Sam go, and then we also get Legolas and Gimli. They're comparing their kills. They both have 43.
Oh my gosh, that is the funniest. When I'm sitting on number 43. Oh,
yes.
And apparently dwarves know advanced anatomy. Who knew?
Right. Well, and Merry and Pippin find apples, and also Saruman's
oh, that was so
food.
funny.
Yeah.
When they're in the water and the apples are there, and then they find the pantry.
Right.
There's like a fully cooked chicken or turkey or something floating in the water.
Yeah, I guess Saruman eats pretty good.
Right.
And he's partial to Hobbit's pipeweed.
Yes, from the Shire.
So much for his chastising of Gandalf in the last film.
So and the fact they didn't want to share it with Treebreed because it was like his relative.
Dead plant. I don't think he'd understand.
So then they just the last thought of so they say, "Go, Frodo, go with the goodwill of all men. All our hopes rely on two little hobbits." And this is Samwise the Brave. Frodo wouldn't have gotten far without Sam. So it goes back to our sort of overall, the story is a story of friendship. And I think that's why it works as well as it does so well. And
I love that Faramir is finally convinced of their goodness because of their relationship and understanding who they are. And then, sacrifices his own self to let them go. I mean, I just really like Faramir. Mm-hmm.
And then Gollum leads them, but we all know he can't really be trusted. So that's sort of our cliffhanger. But
and he resolves to take them to quote her.
Yeah.
And really quickly, what are the two towers?
Orthanc, that's Saruman's stronghold, and Barad-dûr, Sauron's Dark Tower in Mordor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the last shot of the film is one of my favorites because it sets up the stakes for the next film with the red and black skies over Mordor, lightning everywhere. You can just feel Sauron's wrath at his defeat at that point. And you realize they are going into the heart of the Dark Lord's territory. Gotta have hope.
Yeah. Well, I thought I would read a couple other thoughts that I got from people on Twitter. We have Carlo, who says, I still like it a lot. I love the whole trilogy. This is easily my least favorite of the trilogy. The bits with the Ents were tedious, and I had issues with Eowyn and Aragorn's relationship. The battle scenes are spectacular, though. Then we have MC Myers says, it's a good action movie. I just think it tries to do too much for a middle chapter, which made it hard for the third film to pace itself. To fix it, I'd have suggested the same that Tolkien did decades ago, to make Helm's Deep the only big battle and cut out Minas Tirith.
Big disagree.
Then we have Peter Sullivan, director of Hallmark movies. He says, it's one film in the series where I prefer the extended cut. It allowed me to appreciate the story and characters a bit more, and I now think it's my favorite entry. Richard Southworth says, I liked it better when I rewatched it after Return of the King, and the characters that weren't in Fellowship were more established in my head. Andy Serkis' performance as Gollum in the Battle of Helm's Deep are highlights. Nostalgia Cast says, the theatrical cut is too cliffhangers serial to stand equal to Fellowship. In my opinion, the extended edition, though, feels more like an actual movie than middle chapter, with arcs for Aragorn, Sam, Frodo, Faramir, and the Ents that are more fully fleshed out. It's the extended edition I like best. One more from Terry. It says, it's my favorite of the trilogy. When I'm sick, I just pop on the extended edition and feel better. I've watched it more than the other two films. Saw it 3 times in theaters. And I followed up, why do you like it best? And he says, where to begin? The Battle of Helm's Deep is fantastic and still holds up. When the Gandalf the White shows up, and it's an emotional payoff. Love medieval type battles. This counts as one. The characters splitting up gives them more of an arc, and the emotions are high, and it's satisfying for a part 2. And then Cardi Wong, he's an actor that we in Hallmark movies. He said, Helm's Deep is the best battle scene in the series, but I love Fellowship the most. So lots of different opinions going on over on Twitter. But
fascinating.
It's still probably my least favorite, just because the battles get a little long for me sometimes. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see when I see Return of the King, because it has a lot of battles too. But I still think the first one is my favorite. But we'll see how it all.
I don't know yet, but I will say I do agree that this one more clearly has the 3 storylines that come together well, and a start, a middle, and an end. Where at the end I wasn't screaming, "What? It's over!"
Yeah.
It was kind of more concise, and weirdly, even though that extended version is longer.
Mm-hmm. Which one's your favorite, Oscar?
I go back and forth between Fellowship and Return of the King. So even though The Two Towers is by default my least favorite, it's still one of my top 10 favorite films. I still think it's an incredible film that does deviate from the books a few too many times, and could be a little tighter in some ways, especially. But overall, its highs are so good, like Sam's speech, like the Battle of Helm's Deep, that it does pave over some of the issues I have with it.
Yeah. It's an excellent film, and I'm a tough sell when it comes to fantasy. So if I like it, it's probably pretty good.
I can't believe how much I'm liking this, and I can't wait to watch Return of the King.
Yeah.
So
it'll be fun.
It's a bit like ranking 5-star hotels, where you have to get nitpicky about clothes. But,
well,
because they're really all great.
And I love the fact that Terry and Twitter, he was saying he watches it when he's sick. I don't know. That's just a fun thought of putting.
Yeah.
So
and it has comfort in it.
Yeah. Well, let us know, if you're listening, what you think of this movie and all the things we talked about. There's so much going on in this movie that we couldn't possibly cover every detail. So if there's other things that you want to talk about, please do so in the comment section. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And Oscar, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Albion_93.
And Jen, what about you?
I'm on Twitter on @whatjen's_up_to.
Great. You can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps me out a lot. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group, which is really fun, and the merch store. So please take a look at that. And thanks so much to both of you. And we will talk next. Finish out this part of the story. Bye, everyone.
Bye.